You're listening to Beyond Wellness Radio, bringing you the cutting edge in health, biohacking, and sports performance. Stay up to date and listen anywhere and anytime on your computer, tablet, or smartphone by subscribing on iTunes. Catch your host, Dr. Justin Marchegiani, as he answers your burning health questions as well as interviews from world-renowned guest experts. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.
Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani. Welcome to Beyond Wellness Radio. Feel free and head over to beyondwellnessradio.com where you can access our full podcast transcriptions. While you're there, you can also sign up for our thyroid and female hormone video series. This series goes into the root cause of why your hormones are out of balance. While you're there, you can also schedule a functional medicine consult with Dr. Justin, myself, where we'll dig deeper into the root cause of your health challenges. Feel free and think of sharing this podcast with at least one person. This podcast grows by people sharing it. Sharing is caring. If you can think of one person that can benefit from this information, please feel free and share it. If you're enjoying the podcast, make sure you subscribe on iTunes. You can also click below the video or podcast where you'll see the iTunes review button and leave us a review. You can also sign up for the newsletter at beyondwellnessradio.com where you'll get updates before anyone else. Thank you so much and enjoy the show.
Evan, how are we doing today, man?
I'm doing great. What about you?
Doing pretty good. Actually, just got back from San Francisco. A nice little week up in the Bay Area and back to a nice hot weather here in Austin, Texas. Nice hot summer.
Yeah, you can tell that it's slowly sliding into fall here in Kentucky, and I'm not ready for it yet.
Imagine the foliage is probably awesome up there.
It is when it turns. It hasn't turned yet. Another month or so, it's going to be crazy beautiful.
That's great. So we talked before the show about addressing some topics around digestion, especially how to use various digestive supports. I got a email question this week where a patient wanted me to elaborate more on this topic. I think this would be a great topic to discuss today.
Yeah, absolutely. Not everybody, but a lot of people have digestive issues, and that's kind of where I like to start with people most of the time. If you fix that, you fix a lot of other stuff.
Yeah. So regarding digestive issues, there are various digestive supports you can use to help. So HCL or betaine HCL, various enzyme support products, whether it's like protease or lipase or trypsin, like protein or fat digesting enzymes. And then there are things like bile salts, which can also be helpful for emulsifying and breaking down fat. So those are kind of like our three that we're going to contrast with today. So the first foundational one is HCL. And again, HCL can vary depending on how much you need, anywhere between 1 to 3 or 4 grams per meal. And HCL is really important because that HCL really helps lower the pH in your stomach. And that nice low pH activates a compound, a proteolytic enzyme called pepsin. It takes it from pepsinogen, which is inactive, to pepsin, which is active. And when it's active, it really starts the whole protein digesting process. So we need this nice low pH in our stomach, and that nice low pH activates these protein digesting enzymes, and that starts the digestive process. And that nice low pH mixes in with all the food, and this is called chyme, and that chyme then gets released into our small intestine. And without that nice low pH, we don't get that trigger from our pancreas and gallbladder to release bile salts from the gallbladder, and then various enzymes like trypsin and proteolytic enzymes, that means protein digestion, and then also lipase, fat digestion enzyme. So again, this whole domino rally here of kind of, what has to happen first, second, third really happens with hydrochloric acid.
Yep, and hydrochloric acid, if people don't know, this is a good thing. This is a time where acid is better most of the time. People may have this idea from the mainstream media. I just saw a commercial the other day that still makes me gag about Zantac and all these other Nexium and all these companies competing on who has the best acid blocker. And 99.9, and correct me if I'm wrong, 99.9% of the time, the issue is too low stomach acid, not too much. And people that have like a faulty lower esophageal sphincter from stress or whatever, that could actually cause some of that acid to sneak back up into the esophagus where you don't want it to. But if we have the HCL levels optimized, that could prevent some of that stuff from happening.
Yeah, one of the big feedbacks for that esophageal sphincter. That's where the part of your stomach and your esophagus meet. One of the main mechanisms for that esophageal sphincter tightening is nice high levels of hydrochloric acid, but also keeping dysbiosis down in the stomach. So it's one of these things where if we have inadequate levels of HCl in the stomach, well, we start to have bacterial overgrowths because food sits and rots and ferments and putrefies in the stomach. And then part of that whole putrefaction process and rancidification fermenting process, we have various organic acids that rise off of that. And because everything's disrupted, that esophageal sphincter is left open, and those acids will rise up and actually burn that lower part of the esophagus and the upper part of the stomach, creating inflammation. And then you go to your conventional doctor, and they say, oh, you have esophagitis or gastritis, right? All you have to do is just break down the medical speak, cut the word in half. Esophagitis or gastritis, stomach or esophagus, itis meaning inflammation. It's like, well, wait a minute, I already know there's inflammation there, right? If you have pain in your throat, it's probably esophagitis. If you have pain a little bit lower, it's probably gastritis. The question becomes now, what's the cause? Now, your conventional doc will just throw an acid-blocking medication like Nexium or Prilosec or Omeprazole, etc. But again, what's the underlying cause? We already talked about the fact that lack of acid will create this environment where this food rots and then the esophageal sphincter stays open and organic acids rise up. So if you know that mechanism, giving a medication that's blocking the acid actually makes the problem worse. So once you have this biochemical physiological understanding, you can see how the problem is actually being made worse in the long run. You may get symptomatic relief in the short run, but you have a massive amount of other problems because now you can't ionize minerals, you can't break down protein optimally. There's going to be more dysbiosis, more gut infections because we don't have the ability to sterilize the environment. So now we're set up for a whole host of long-term issues.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of a good analogy. I know you're always killing it with those, but it's almost like blaming the firemen for the fire. Does that count as an accurate analogy for that situation?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, most medications are designed to manage symptoms, and there's nothing wrong with that, like in the short run, a day or two, right? But the problem is when symptoms are managed and you have the false expectation that the underlying cause was fixed, that's where problems become long-term, because then now you're stuck using this long-term, and then because your whole gut physiology is screwed up, you can't come off it. And the conventional medical model is really about managing symptoms, and then essentially you get hooked on these drugs because the symptoms now, once you come off, are now really bad, and you can't deal. Any comments on that, Evan?
No, I think that's a great overview of how the conventional model, once again, does not succeed in getting to the root cause of digestive issues.
Yeah, and these medications, I mean, they're like in the top 5 every year, these proton pump inhibitors.
Billions.
Billions. Top 5, I mean, right next to Synthroid and Lipitor. I mean, and your antidepressants, they're right up there in the top 5 every year. And the analogy I kind of tell my patients, when you're stressed and you're taking these medications, they're really lessening, or they're really taking off or turning off your force field. So imagine like the Star Trek ship, it's got that nice force field around it. So when the Klingons come in there and attack, it's got the force field up and it can defend itself. But when we lower our hydrochloric acid levels and things come into our environment, we're not going to be able to mount an attack against it.
Great. Yeah, I was hoping you would navigate into that territory. What happens then once that acid level is low over a period of time? It's not just the crappy digestion. It's not just the burping and heartburn, indigestion. It's not all that. It goes way deeper, and that's kind of what you're alluding to now, is that other stuff downstream, these next dominoes in line, those get messed up too, and you run into all sorts of things like biliary stasis, gallbladder issues, and all of that. So I don't know if you wanted to move down south, down the system, and talk about that now.
Yeah, if we don't have enough hydrochloric acid, that nice low pH when all that chyme, which is just mixed up food, right? If we don't have that nice low pH, our gallbladder isn't triggered to contract. And if we're not contracting that gallbladder, if bile salts sit too long in that gallbladder and aren't being emptied periodically, kind of like changing the oil in your car, things can get really grimy and get sludgy, and that can potentially create a stone over time. And these stones, then at some point you eat a fatty meal, that gallbladder contracts. It's like wrapping your hand around a porcupine and squeezing. It's not going to be a good situation.
That's a good one. Let's if we have a minute here, I want to talk about gallbladder flushes real quick, because I know a lot of people do those and they read about them, like drinking like a cup of olive oil at the end of a fast, and I get asked about that and I just think it sounds crazy, so I don't ever have a complete answer on it.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of doing that off the bat. There may be a desire and a need for that down the road. But if your digestion isn't working and you're not breaking down food, and then you go do this big flush and there potentially is a stone in there, and that gallbladder is contracting because of all the olive oil and or apple juice you're taking in, and that gallbladder contracts down around that stone, right? Visualize yourself grabbing a porcupine and then squeezing. There could be some inflammation, and you may end up going to the ER, and you're going to be pushed to have that gallbladder taken out. Always. I mean, I've saved hundreds of gallbladders just because gallbladder issues are almost always due to food allergens and a combination of low level of stomach acid, which, may be driven by even a deeper infection, but definitely the food and the stomach acid off the bat is the first perfect storm element that really sets you up for gallbladder issues.
Wow. Yeah, gallbladder surgery, it's ridiculous how common it is. They act like it's just as simple as getting some stitches on a cut. Oh yeah, let me just pull your gallbladder out real quick.
Oh, I know. I mean, I wonder if most of these medical doctors had the same kind of mindset, like if we dealt with their car, like if we just said, hey, you're having a little bit of a issue in your car today with this issue. Let me pull open the hood. Yeah, this thing right here, let's pull it out. I guarantee you they'd be a little bit more selective over their car, but when it comes to their patients, they're just like, yeah, let's pull it out. It's not working. It's like, but why? And is there anything we can do conservatively to prevent that? Like some of the things we talked about that are virtually free.
Yeah, we can't make billions. We could talk about all these supplements, and we'll never make billions off of these things. I mean, a bottle of hydrochloric acid is going to be less than $30, so it's just insane.
I know. And on that note, hydrochloric acid is a powerful supplement to start off with anyone that has chronic health issues. Typically, how we dose it is we start off with 1 capsule per meal. And I like to take it in the middle of the meal. Why in the middle of the meal? Is because, well, if you have gastritis, which is that, gut inflammation, right? Gastro meaning stomach, itis meaning inflammation. So if our gut lining is thin and we're inflamed and we put a nice hydrochloric acid capsule right against that mucosa and it starts to dissolve, well, it's like touching a scab on your hand or on your arm. It's going to be more sensitive. So we take it in the middle of our meal, kind of like an Oreo cookie. It's right in the middle. It's like the cream filling, not at the beginning, not at the end. And we start off with 1, and we take it at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We see how we do, and then each day we work up to 2, to 3, to 4. Again, there's this whole idea we can go up to warmness or HCL tolerance. That can be good. I'm also very careful of going above 4 or 5 capsules just because I don't want to cause a ulcer in the small intestine. So it's called a duodenum. That's where the stomach connects in with the small intestine. When all that acid goes into the duodenum, our pancreas has to make a whole bunch of bicarbonate to start to neutralize that acidity. So if we're jacking it up really high where we're doing 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 capsules per meal and you're still not feeling warmness, I get a little concerned because I don't want to cause a duodenal ulcer. So 4 or 5 tends to be a pretty good place that I stay at for patients, especially if they're seeing a benefit of foods feeling lighter, they're feeling like it's digesting, they're having, better bowel movements, they're having less burping or gas. We'll stay at that 4 or 5 mark. I don't like to go too much above that unless we're closely monitoring them.
Yeah, I got nothing to add there. That's great advice, and I typically take a 1. I'm great with 1, but I'm still young, so I'm still producing a decent amount for now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
until I get older, become an old man.
Mm-hmm. And hydrochloric acid levels do go down with age, so we got to keep in mind that because a lot of elderly patients, they're having all these bone issues and osteoporosis issues, and it's like, man, Boniva and all these other medications are not going to fix the issue because a lot of times it really starts in the digestive system. We're just not breaking down and ionizing these minerals, and we need good levels of hydrochloric acid to ionize the minerals. so we can absorb them into our bloodstream and utilize them.
I don't know if you agree with this, but to me, optimizing HCL levels to me is probably one of my top 3 to 5 foundational things I could ever do for somebody.
I couldn't agree more. 100%. Now, the next thing on top of that is we'll also add in enzymes. And depending on how chronic or how long someone's had gut issues, I either use a combination product with enzymes and hydrochloric acid together with bile salts for my patients that aren't doing too bad. My patients that are having more chronic issues, we'll separate them out because a lot of times their gut lining's thinner. They have this gastritis issue where that gut lining's been worn down, and they will only be able to handle maybe 1 or 2 hydrochloric acid capsules, but they'll need a lot more enzymes. So if we package the enzymes together, we kind of hit the wall sooner because we only can do 2. Where if we have the enzymes separately, we can go up to 3, 4, 5 enzymes per meal, and it's just the enzymes. And because the enzymes aren't as abrasive, we can hit a more therapeutic level with them and have better protein and fat digestion capacity, even when the HCLs hit the wall at a 1 or 2 state.
Interesting. So sometimes people can get away with just enzymes, and they won't need the hydrochloric acid in combination with.
Yeah, I mean, I typically recommend enzymes separately, but we're still giving HCL by itself.
Right,
so
okay.
We may hit the wall at 1, for instance. Some of my chronic gut issues will hit the wall at 1, but great. I mean, that doesn't mean, though, you're getting enough enzymes. We'll work on upping the enzymes separately to 3 or 4 or 5 and seeing how we do. In some patients, even after that, if I see a lot of fecal fat in their stool test, we'll even add a separate product by itself that just has high amounts of lipase, which is a fat digesting enzyme, and high amounts of bile salts. And with my chronic gut issues, with my chronic gut patients, by this combination here of combining HCL and enzymes or HCL enzymes and fat digestive support, we can get their body's ability to break down some of these nutrients better, which buys us time to start getting the gut and the adrenals fixed. Because if we absorb better nutrients, if we absorb the nutrients from our good diet better, we're going to be able to use those nutrients to help heal our body. And then if we get to the underlying adrenal stuff, infections, dysbiosis, SIBO, etc., we're going to be able to fix this problem long term. So maybe in 6 months or so, we can pull them off of some of these digestive support products as long as they're managing their stress and eating well.
Great point. Yeah, and I see that people want to self-diagnose themselves, or they'll zoom in on this tiny, tiny problem. But sometimes we can't get to those tiny problems if we don't zoom out and hit on the foundation that's going to help improve that tiny problem downstream, where we may not even need a specific protocol for XYZ tiny problem anymore because we zoomed out and fixed the big thing at the top of the chain.
Absolutely. And a lot of my patients have H. pylori infections, and H. pylori is this gram-negative bacteria that actually produces toxins called lipopolysaccharide or endotoxins, but it also produces an enzyme called urease, which takes the urea, which is a byproduct of protein metabolism, right? Protein digestion primarily happens where? In your stomach. So it takes that urea and metabolizes it into CO2 and ammonia. Ammonia has a pH of 11, so it'll actually lower your stomach acid levels, meaning it'll raise the pH, right? Remember, low pH, 2 or so, is where you're nice and acidic, where your stomach should be. So it'll actually raise the pH, okay? And that will make your stomach acid levels go lower, all right? Don't get that confused. So when pH goes up, stomach acid levels go lower. So it's kind of an inverse opposite thing. And that will affect your body's digestion. So we can't just give HCL or enzymes and just say, hey, the problem's fixed, even though I'm feeling better. Because if there's an infection, especially H. pylori, we got to get to the root cause.
Yeah. What's your favorite for that? Do you like the breath test?
Breath test can be helpful. And what's the breath test looking at? It's looking at an excessive amount of CO2, essentially. Well, why CO2? Well, we just mentioned, right? What's the mechanism? Urease from H. pylori takes the urea and pumps it out to ammonia and CO2. So it's the byproduct of what the H. pylori is doing is what's making the CO2 go up. So breath test can be helpful. We'll look at stool antigen, and stool PCR, which is stool DNA. And then we'll also look at blood, which is IgG, IgM, IgA. And that's kind of looking at an immune response to the H. pylori. But I like the stool the best. That tends to be my favorite, PCR and stool antigen, which are great. So we're looking at a piece of the DNA, and we're looking at a piece of the actual infection in the stool.
Nice.
Anything you want to add, Evan?
No, I'm loving it. Keep going.
So I find a lot of conventional docs, they miss the digestive support element, and even the functional medicine docs too. They miss the digestive support element, or they don't hit it at a therapeutic level. That's step one. And then step two is they miss that deeper underlying infection. And a lot of times it may not just be an H. pylori. It may be an H. pylori, a parasite, and a fungal issue. So I see a lot of patients, because Candida programs are really popular these days, where they're just doing a Candida program, but they have Candida, but they also have an H. pylori infection and a parasite. And again, H. pylori and parasites, they're more on the top of that pyramid in our infection hierarchy, where it's kind of like if you just knock out the Candida, it's like pulling grass out at the surface. I should say it's like pulling a weed out at the surface. If we don't get to the root, that weed's going to grow back. So a lot of people are treating gut issues, even SIBO, for instance, but there's a deeper issue underneath at the root that may be an H. pylori or a parasite, and all the SIBO programs and all of the Candida programs may not be enough to get to the root issue.
Great. Yeah, great point. And once again, cookie cutter doesn't work. That's why you need a practitioner to do this stuff. It gets complex sometimes real quick.
Yeah, I know you have a lot of experience too, so not just paleo.com as well as justinhealth.com. If anyone's like thinking about this and like, all right, I'm going to try some of this HCL, I'm going to try this. If you want to dig in deeper and see if there's any other root causal issues, that would be your next step to dig in, at least ensure there's nothing else lingering under the surface.
Yep.
Anything else you want to add, Evan?
No, I think this is a great overview. I think we could make it a lot longer, but there's no need to because we've covered the bases and the foundations of digestion pretty well today. So good job.
Hey, you too. And I think, where we're specializing in is really foundational information, because you can get minute and you can do this study or that study or this isolated nutrient, whatever. But again, if the foundation isn't there, people aren't going to benefit. They aren't going to get better. So I hope people just walk away with a good foundational take home. And also remember one thing, hydrochloric acid, taking HCL is not going to lower your own production. Okay. So that's a good thing. It's not like taking testosterone where the organs that make testosterone actually shrink, right? You're not going to have that issue. So with taking HCL, it's not going to affect our body's production of it. It actually takes the stress off our gut so we can actually heal. So kind of keep that in mind too. If we take some of these things, even long term, it's not going to hurt our own internal production. It'll actually only help it.
Great point. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people were questioning that. Is it safe long term? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, because the main signal for HCL production is gastrin. And they've done studies looking at gastrin levels while on HCL over periods of months and time. And the gastrin levels did not drop while on HCL, which is good.
Yep.
All right, Evan, man. Hey, great talking to you, bud.
Yeah, sounds good. You too.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com and click the questions button. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, click below to review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com.